Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's another episode of Final Boy Status, your favorite podcast, your best friend's favorite podcast, your lover's favorite podcast. I think it's Adam's favorite podcast. Or we're going to decide
12 for sure.
It's in the top 12. That's pretty
good. Well, okay. That's pretty good.
It's probably 9 or 10. I don't know.
That could be way worse, honestly.
Yeah, true.
But I think it's time we give the audience some direction, give them some comfort by providing our names. I will start with myself. I am Luke Haueter. I am often on this show as one of your hosts. I'll be taking charge this week. And I am so pleased to be joined, as always, by my friends, first and foremost, lovers, countrymen. Once upon a time, the three of us wrestled in mud together, and that was a dream come true. But first and foremost, we have Mr. Lanson Lappin is with us today.
Yo, 'tis I.
Yo.
It's me, Yo.
It's me, Yo. Come on,
every
guys,
time you think you gotten rid of me, I come right back.
Back and forth, bro.
That's Lanson. You just can't let him go, man. He's on you like a leash.
Can't let him go, and you can walk him like a dog.
Yeah, no, both of those statements are true. I'm quite adept at being a quadruped, so you know.
Can I make a confession to you, gentlemen, that you may not have known about me?
What?
You know those kids in elementary school that got way too into yo-yos and learned like a bunch of the tricks and were constantly like showing it off?
Who were super cool?
It was not cool.
Dude, I thought it was super cool. I was like, what kind of wizardry is this? I'm over here like tying it around my neck and just like, I don't know what happened. It went wrong. It went very wrong.
I remember at the height of my obsession, I had 5 different yo-yos, which were each good for different things.
Yeah.
And this finger here,
finger.
You can't see it anymore. Or no, it was the middle finger, actually. That's where I put the string. But like, I did so much yoing during the course of one summer that I like made a welt in my middle finger, like right at the base.
Yo-yo callus.
Yeah, it was like I had a ring on my middle finger, and then it got crushed in like a car door and left a mark. So yeah, I had like a weird like red welt because I spent so much time doing the yo-yo.
One ring to rule them all, man.
Hey, you do what you got to do for power. Speaking of power.
Go ahead.
Speaking of power, we haven't introduced the most powerful member of our trio. Powerful because he holds the masses in awe as he eats lasagna and talks about movies. I don't think he's eating lasagna this week. We've been told there might be the possibility of some ravioli, but our pasta maestro himself, Mr. Adam Bone.
Hi, I am out of ravioli. We just finished it off like 2 seconds ago, so didn't save it for the podcast, but I have Mountain Dew. And Luke, I want to hear some numbers. How much tail did you get from yo-yoing? Because it has to be in the triple digits.
The triple dig.
Yeah.
This might surprise you to I don't know what the sentence was going to be, and now I have to find it in real time. This might surprise you to learn about from your history textbook, but considering the fact that I was 9 when this was happening and was more interested in yo-yos than girls, my pursuit of yo-yos only yielded more yo-yos and yielded exactly 0 women. We can kind of use that as a segue into talking about this movie.
Sure. Yeah.
There was a character in this movie that I like weirdly related to, in that he is a young boy, unlucky in love, who gets preoccupied with really strange projects. And he was also a little chubby, which was like me. I was a chubby little guy. And I'm, of course, talking about the character Ben Hanscom in the movie we're talking about this week, which is It. I incorrectly, before we started, said like 3 different times that we were talking about It Chapter 2, because apparently my brain is just in a completely different universe, but it is in fact It. We are talking about the 2017 adaptation of Stephen King's It. So that was a weird like through line I had watching the movie this time, was like looking at the character of Ben and being like, I never found him that relatable in the past when I watched this movie. I always identified more with Richie, but this time watching it through, being like, oh yeah, there's like a pretty girl who's more interested in like your buddy than she is in you, and you're kind of chubby and you listen to like music that you're embarrassed to be listening to. Which was a big thing for me in junior high and high school. So yeah, like me at like 12, I was kind of a Ben. I think it's fair to say I was a little bit of a weirdo, was preoccupied with weird things. My obsession with yo-yos had passed, but alas, I was into other things.
Right on.
But I mean, yeah, so putting my own personal history aside, we're going to put it away where the audience can't find any more of it. I'm wiping all traces of myself from the internet, so it'll be hard to find even the porn I did in the early 90s. So I think you'll find
incognito mode.
Yeah. You can't even find it there. That's the crazy part.
What?
It used to be so easy to find, you know, you just typed in Red Rocket and you get all the results you wanted, but I'm making it very difficult. Making it very difficult for you guys. But let's talk seriously now for a moment. Let's talk about the quality of this. I believe you call it a film. And I would like to start with Mr. Adam Bone, hear what he has to say about it.
So I realized after we finished our last podcast that I don't think we ever talked about the spookiness of Halloween Kills. I could be wrong, but after the podcast, I was like, I think we only talked about the quality. So I'm bringing that up just to say we can't skip spoopiness for this one, because I think this is a pretty spooky movie. Quality for this movie is also pretty high for me. I like this movie a lot. I remember seeing it for the first time and being pretty surprised on how effective it was in a lot of areas. How scary it was, for one thing. It was like scarier than I expected it to be. It was a little bit like more hardcore than I thought it would be in a lot of different ways, in the violence and also in kind of the real world aspects of it, which is great because that's kind of what Stephen King is all about, taking the real world and, you know, having it enhanced by the spooky creatures and the crazy god turtles or whatever. But I really like this movie. I think it's super fun. I think a lot of movies, when they try to write dialogue for kids, it really just like doesn't sound legit, or it's Shyamalan and they all sound like they all have like PhDs in history or something like that. But this movie, they feel like kids. They feel like they're just having fun. They're swearing. They're having a good time. And it's super fun to watch. You feel like a kid again. You feel the fears that kids have. You feel the summer joy. So I thought it was all really effective. My biggest negative that I'll bring up, so big positive I'll start by saying, is the Pennywise, played by Bill Skarsgård. I think he's awesome. The first scene with Georgie is one of my favorite scenes from this movie. I think the acting is incredible. It's so freaky. I think my biggest gripe is that after that scene, the rest of Pennywise is kind of like computer animated, and he has some spooky moments, but there's never any scene where you're as engaged with his portrayal of the character after that first part, which to me was kind of disappointing. I wish I could have seen more Pennywise. And I haven't read the book, so maybe that's how the book is. He's not a guy who has monologues or talks to the kids all that often, and that's fair, but I would have liked to see more of that. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot of gripes. I like this movie a lot. It's really good. I'm going to give it a 10.5 out of 13. I think it's super solid.
You're coming strong out of the gate, my friend.
Love
I appreciate it. Coming in hot. Lanson Lappin, I would like to hear your thoughts on this movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a very solid horror flick. I mean, you know, I feel like what I like about it is you kind of get that 80s vibe, almost like a R-rated Goonies sort of a vibe, where, you know, that kind of dynamic between the kids and that that sense of friendship that permeates throughout is really good. Yeah, I was definitely surprised as well. I hadn't really like read the book or watched the miniseries from the 90s, so I didn't really have much context for what it would be, or what the movie would be like. And yeah, it definitely, it is it's not messing around. Like it goes hard in the paint for sure. I think something that I get from this movie is, and obviously we'll talk about this more in the next section, but it's something I think that's great about it is it's not just scary, but really disturbing. Just makes you at a lot of different places feel very uncomfortable and just like, oh, wow. But yeah, the cast, the kids that act in it give a great job. As Adam said, the dialogue isn't clunky. It flows pretty well. It sounds like, what a bunch of kids would sound like as they're hanging out during the summer. So I really enjoy that. But yeah, I mean, it's just a solid movie. I don't have a ton where I'm like, oh, well, there was this or there was that. Overall, it was a good experience. So out of 13, I'll give it an 8.5 out of 13.
Very, very nice. Oh, it's hard. And once again, we're in the predicament of the person who goes last has to figure
Whenever
out
you
something
go third,
new
it's
to
the
say.
worst. Yeah.
Figuring out something to say that somebody hasn't already said. So yeah, I do agree with these gentlemen on everything that they brought up. Well made. It's not afraid of being very real. It's not it's disturbing as well as it is scary. I might have the unique perspective in this podcast of I have actually read the book. It was a few years ago at this point. I'm not going to remember it perfectly. But I will say that like no adaptation of this book is going to be without its challenges, because this book is it's wild. There are space turtles. I mean, even the concept of like the deadlights is like so ambiguous in the book that you're like, how do you put that into a movie? And this movie pulls it off. I mean, when his friggin' skull opens and the deadlights are in there, it's very effective. It's very creepy. I will say, I think one thing I will say that is very complimentary of this movie is I did not see this in theaters. I did not see it probably for like, I probably saw it about a year after it came out, maybe a year and a half. I don't know. But the thing is, there was a lot of hype around this movie. This is like one of the highest grossing R-rated horror movies of all time. And the hype around this movie made me think like I was going to be underwhelmed by it. And the highest compliment I can give this movie is I was not underwhelmed at all. It like deserved the hype it got. It was very good. It was well made. I have some gripes with the movie. That's kind of a personal thing. And maybe specifically will come into more play as we talk about like the spookiness. One thing I will briefly call out that I have mixed feelings about, and I think it's okay to have mixed feelings about, is kind of how the movie handles Bev, where she is like, she's entering puberty and it's a very weird time in her life and there's a lot of mixed emotions about it. And obviously in the source material, there's a lot of pretty intense content about her relationship with her dad, and all the adult men in her life are weirdly predatory towards her in the source material and in this. What kind of bothers me is there are moments in this movie where it feels like the movie is trying to sell this underage actress as sexy. And there's two sides to this conversation, which is one, to these 12-year-old boys, she's the hottest thing they've ever seen. So I kind of understand why the movie does it, because we're seeing her through their eyes. But the other side of it is, this is an underage actress, and there's a lot of things you can do that would be less compromising for her. But again, that's a very nuanced conversation that I'm not qualified to have, but it does affect my score of this movie, where there is a few moments in it where I'm a little bit like, come on. But at the same time, it's not as egregious as Stephen King's book. Stephen King writing Bev is like real gross in some places, and I did not care for it. So just to be totally honest, that's a criticism I have. I still enjoy this movie. I enjoy that it's raw. I enjoy that it's real. And I enjoy that these kids are so genuine. Like a lot of their conversations feel like real things I would have talked about with my friends when I was 12. So all that whirlwind of trying to say something interesting leads me to put this movie. I'm going to go somewhere in the middle. I'm probably going to put this at a 9. And truth be told, if all of my complaints about this movie had been fixed, I would be happy putting this movie at a 12. But because of those few small issues I have with it, it's going to be at a 9 for me. And Adam doesn't want to forget the spookiness, so we're going to roll right into it. But I'm going to shock the world, and I'm going to let Lanson go first. No pressure to think of something new to say. He gets to lay the groundwork for the rest of us. Lanson, spookiness. What do you think of this movie?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely a scary movie. I think something that it really has going for it is, again, I kind of talked about that it's disturbing. And I think part of that is because Pennywise is hunting children. Like, I think there's always like that line of like, okay, this is like the serial killer, this is like the slasher, but he doesn't go over after kids. But Pennywise has no problem doing that. That's that's his
almost what he prefers.
Exactly, right. So I think that permeates throughout, and especially like that first scene with Georgie is just heart-wrenching, where it's like, oh wow, like that was amazing, but at the same time, wow, I felt that one. So yeah, there's definitely, I will say there are some points in the movie where it's a little goofy, like when Pennywise is huge and it comes out of the projector. I'm like, okay, well that kind of takes me out of it. It's a little too cartoonish for my taste, but overall, no, it's a scary movie. It's just, I know Bill Skarsgård is an actor and I know he's just playing a character, but I don't know if I would ever want to meet him. Obviously, maybe he's like a super nice guy, but there's just that vibe to him where he does such a good job at being creepy and scary that I'm like, I'm okay. So yeah, I would say out of 13, I will give this movie I'll give it a 7.
Dang. That's pretty high score. We rate a lot of movies really low, all things considered.
Right.
Movies that we love, we're like, I don't know, this is probably like a 4.
Right.
Adam, what do you make of this movie? I forgot to mention earlier, so for those listening in for the very first time, we do rate on a scale of 1 to 13. 13 being the best a movie could be or the scariest a movie could be. And we do 13 because we're a spooky time podcast. So if you're listening for the first time and you're not sure the significance of these numbers, let me put it in context. So Adam, spookiness out of 13, where does this land for you?
This one's kind of tougher for me to figure out because I think the first time I watched it, it was really scary. And in my opinion, or I guess in my experience, on subsequent viewings, it's a lot less scary after that first kind of shock factor. You're like, whoa, this is really going for it. This is really freaky. I don't like this. Where's this going? I think part of it is kind of what my negative thought was when it came to the quality, where I think near the end, there are some just kind of like CGI heavy parts that are a lot less scary for me when Pennywise is just bugging out in the water. Like, I don't know. I'm like, well, that doesn't really feel real. That seems kind of like, I don't know. It is a scary visual. And there's that moment where you see him in the water and his eyes do the thing. And that's pretty scary. But I think once it gets like, I don't know. Like I said, some of that CGI heavy stuff was a little less scary. Also, there are parts where the kids are experiencing what to them is the scariest thing. So like, and I'm sorry, I'm not good at remembering any of their names, the kids, and differentiating them from each other. So sorry about that. But
this movie does have something in common with a bad tweet, which is too many characters.
Yeah, I could see that. So the one that is a really good actor, and I respect him. He was in Shazam. He was great, but he is scared of zombies. So, or lepers or sickness and stuff like that. So he sees that leprous zombie guy. And I was like, that's not that scary. And also that painting thing to me wasn't that scary. But I think it doesn't detriment the movie because you see the horror of the kids and how vulnerable and scared they are, and that kind of relates to you, even though you may not be scared of the same things. It was still effective. So that all being said, I still think it's a really scary movie. I know I kind of like went negative on it. I think especially that first scene was really scary. But I'm going to give it I'm going to give it a 7.5. I think it was really scary at first. On future viewings, it may not be as scary, but I think it was very effective.
Dang. I'm gonna parrot Adam a little bit on something, which is like one thing that is kind of weird in this movie is it does take the form of whatever is scariest to the child. So in some scenes, there's like the horrifying imagery of burning hands reaching out behind a door for a child, or Pennywise using dead Georgie as a puppet to talk to Bill, which are like horrifying and like you think about for days after. And then other scenes it's like Pennywise is just a clown, or Pennywise is like the leper, or even the painting lady does seem a little silly in hindsight, but I really like some of the scenes with the painting lady. Well, the very first scene with the painting lady where like you just don't expect it to just straight up walk, like it just out of nowhere, it just like walks into the room. And it's really unexpected, and I liked that. So I do agree with you that sometimes it feels a little silly that you have like serious and disturbing imagery for like some of the characters, and then other characters get like, like Ben sees a mummy at one point, and it's like, really, a mummy's supposed to scare us at this point? Like, we've seen some pretty fucked up stuff at this, like, by now. I don't know that I care about, a villain in a Brendan Fraser movie at this moment, but it's I will say, I think something that really takes me out of this movie is I don't think there's a single thing done 100% practically. Everything uses CGI in one way or another. Even if it starts with a practical effect, they do CG to it later. And that is always something I struggle with. I do think like there is a perfect union that exists between practical and CG. This is going to sound strange because this is nobody's favorite film by any means, but I think the film that gets the combination of CG and practical perfect is actually the movie Prometheus, where it's like just the right amount of CGI on top of practical things to make everything look crazy real. And like, I've never seen another movie do it as good. And this movie definitely falls victim to too much CGI. I also think that my barometer might just be broken at this point because we consume so many horror movies for this podcast. My sister was like, I could watch this movie, right? There's nothing that bad in it. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is a pretty mild horror movie. And I was like watching it without her, by the way. She still hasn't watched it, but I'm probably gonna have to call her and be like, I need to reassess. That movie was a little more messed up than I thought it was. I mean, the movie opens with a kid getting his arm ripped off. Like, I got to reset my barometer a little. So I'm worried that all three of us might be broken.
I know,
but
maybe
for where I'm coming from, there is spooky stuff in this movie. It's ruined by all the CGI. Also, I don't like this movie seems to equate like a shaking body with being scary, where like anytime Pennywise runs at the camera, it's not the spooky thing of like, I think it would be creepy if there was like no movement and he just got closer to you, and it's like very smooth and very like eerie in that way. But instead it's always like, it's like he's doing like a shimmy towards the camera. I'm coming to get you. And even like that, like scenes where like Bill shoots the fake Georgie and then Georgie turns into Pennywise, it's kind of ruined by like how much shaking happens during it. It's a weird thing to double down on, and I don't care for it. So I feel like there's really scary stuff in this movie. I'm not going to deny any of that. There's some really well constructed and scary stuff in it. I just think that there's like too much CGI and too much of the shaky in like some of the stuff that I read, some of the moments that I was really trying to get into. So I'm actually going to be giving this the lowest scare score out of the three of us, which is interesting because I'm the biggest baby by far. And I'm going to put this at a 6, actually. I think there's a lot of potential here. And if you don't mind CGI, this will be very spooky for you. But because like too much CGI will take me out faster than anything else, this movie falls into that trap for me where I'm really invested and then a CGI thing shows up and I'm like, oh. So that's where I'm at. And now moving right along, we got to get into the meat of this podcast. This is the meat and taters, everybody's favorite part. Final Boy Status is all about figuring out whether or not we can survive horror movies. Us as 3 average Joes, if we were plopped into the circumstances of this movie, how would we handle this? So the first thing we usually do is we talk about our antagonist. In this case, the evil entity referred to as Pennywise, Bob Gray. It has many names in the book and is referred to as different things within the movie. But let's start breaking down some of the strengths and weaknesses of this creature, this unearthly creature. Lanson, you look ready to chime in with something. Let's go.
Sure. I mean,
let's go, big boy. Tell me everything. Tell me. I want to know.
Can you show
Tell me. Tell me.
Well, what I have to say is, I mean, Pennywise is not, as you said, is not from this world. So he has a lot of abilities to be able to just shapeshift into anything, which is that's pretty hard to prepare for if it just looks like, I don't know, like your neighbor or like a fire hydrant or like whatever, whatever he wants to do, he can shapeshift into, as well as like he's extremely durable. Like you can't just like shoot him in the head or like stab him in the chest or anything like that. Like he isn't killed that way. So, I think me not having that information beforehand, it would make it really hard for me to be able to battle him. Like you can't just face him with brute force.
Oh, well, I mean, in fairness, brute force seems to work fine as long as you're not afraid of him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, precisely.
It's that combo of things, but that is a hard combo to like navigate.
Yeah.
Because you have to survive one clash with him before you can even get to the point where maybe you're not scared of him.
Right.
I don't know. Adam's creasing his eyebrows in concentration. He's got something. He's got something cooking.
I was thinking of a lot of different things, so I'm trying to figure out where to actually go with it.
He's thinking about what he wanted he's thinking about what he's going to have for breakfast tomorrow. He's not, he forgot he was doing a podcast.
I was like, what's a breakfast Italian dish? That's kind of been my thing. Breakfast
How can
lasagna.
I get pasta into breakfast?
I think that there's a lot to be said about Pennywise. I think his powers, while there is lore and there are things in this movie, everything is quite ambiguous. Because there is a second one that's going to break down the lore a little bit more. I'd assume. I haven't seen the second one, but I think as far as these kids are concerned, they know they eventually figure out feeds off their fear. And I mean, that's kind of it. So I think that's a big strength for it to be such a different thing, not of this world. It's not like a creature feature like we've seen before. This thing is very supernatural and has very supernatural powers. I also think on a very different note, it makes it very hard to how do I put the sentence together? The creature, its powers and what it does makes it very hard for the kids to sound legitimate to adults. And that's a part that we kind of see in this movie. But, if you go crying to your mom, you're like, oh, I saw the leper guy. and she knows that's something that you're scared of, she's like, okay, like you're just having night terrors. But when it's really happening, so to explain that this thing is happening to these kids is something that I think is also a strength of the creature, that it sounds made up. It sounds like a kid is just making it up, which makes it even more scary when you're like, well, no adult, no person is actually going to buy this story. The kids are totally alone. They have to face it alone because it only exists kind of in their world, their imagination almost in a way, because it's like this thing targeting kids, and it's like, no one's gonna believe you. You're gonna say that the painting came alive, and they know that's what you're scared of, and they know that's like your thing. So I don't know. So I think that actually adds to the scariness and a strength of the creature.
Well, I mean, and like he literally causes like a blood explosion in Bev's bathroom, and her dad comes in and can't see anything. He's like, "What are you talking about?"
Exactly, almost literally in their imagination, it exists.
Yeah, I mean, it's that part is ambiguous whether he's like fooling the adult or whether like only the kids can see the blood. But there is like that element to it where clearly the adults just have no concept of what's happening for whatever reason. I don't know. You'd think a couple adults might notice a friggin' space clown running around their town, but
killer clowns from space.
Apparently these adults are busy abusing their children. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's like a very Stephen King thing. Like all the adults are just dirt bags. I'm like, yep.
Don't talk to me. Also, a lot of the kids are dirtbags in very heinous ways.
Derry is just like full of very bad people.
Well, but that's something that's actually talked about a bit in the books, which is, it's a good thing you brought it up because it is a strength of it, which is like its presence can actually like, it's not explained very well in the book. My memory of it is pretty hazy, and I remember it being kind of ambiguous, but like the presence of this creature in the town of Derry, especially when it comes out of hibernation, is it actually like does something to like the people of Derry. Like we see how it affects specifically Henry, I can't think of his last name, Henry Bowers. We see specifically Pennywise has a very distinct effect on Henry Bowers and literally turns him into a psycho killer. And then in the second movie, there are some things that are like, it's not stated in the second movie, which is why certain scenes in the second movie were criticized a lot for being too brutal. Because clearly they're adapting from the source material without explaining a specific thing. But like Pennywise has an effect over the bullies of Derry and makes them like more brutal and more like psycho than like normal bullies would be. So like Henry Bowers like kind of doing Pennywise's bidding, like he just sort of graduated. Like there were a lot of people in the town who were a little bit under the influence already. Like it kind of implied that Henry's whole gang is like kind of being influenced by Pennywise to be crueler and more brutal. I guess we don't have much concept for what they were like before Pennywise woke up, but like there clearly seems to be an escalation, at least with Henry, because there are moments in the movie where like even his gang are like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this is crazy. So I do think that's something we have to put in the strength category for Pennywise, is if you're a person with some not nice tendencies, he amplifies that in you, I think. And again, I think that might speak to why some of the adults behave the way that they do, because they're kind of like some of their toxic behaviors are being amplified by Pennywise's presence. That being said, like there is not a redeemable adult character in this movie. They're all like really heinous in one way or another. I mean, maybe the most like human character is Bill's dad, but even he like shouts at his son and like aggressively is like, your brother is dead. No, shut up about your brother. He's dead, which is like aggressive. So I that does seem to be an element of the book that the movie kind of plays into, but doesn't bother explaining. And chapter 2 leans into it more and explains less. But Pennywise does have kind of an influence over the town. Like some of like the big town disasters that people talk about in the book and in the movies, I believe in the book, like some of them were even instigated by just people, not by Pennywise. So yeah, that's something to note about good old PW.
I'm trying to formulate some negatives here because I feel like Pennywise is pretty OP, man. I think obviously the bane, the kryptonite for Pennywise is you just not being scared of it, and that's kind of something that is a good defense. And so I was thinking, I was like, okay, what if you have like a sociopath kid who like has no feelings, and Pennywise comes up and he's like, I'm good. Like I have nothing. You have nothing to. But that would be like the kind of character that would be influenced in a negative way. I'd almost feel like where, for the bullies who are like, I don't know, not like fearless or all are sociopaths, but it seems like he uses them to antagonize the kids, and then the kids who are like not that way. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to say exactly what a way to, or just a chink in the armor there.
I do feel like there's something kind of interesting about the Losers Club specifically, in that they are probably the most traumatized group of children in Derry, and that seems to be why Pennywise is so interested in them. And like there's almost an element of like he wants to savor them. So like this might be weird to call out, but if you're a kid who's got some serious trauma, you might taste a little bit sweeter to old PW, and you might be the kind of thing he plays some cat and mouse with. The other kids who are like a little more normal, he deals with them pretty quick, it seems. Like Georgie, he grabs in the course of like 5 minutes. And like Hochstetter, kind of the same, although Hochstetter's obviously not normal, but like and then in like the follow-up movie we kind of see the same thing where like he just quick nabs kids and gets away. But for some reason the Losers Club, he's determined to get them, but he really wants to savor it and he wants to take his time with them. So maybe something else to comment about the character of Pennywise is he has like, children that are dealing with some real problems, some real shit. They're like very enticing to him. So I don't know, maybe if you're just like a normal, like run of the mill kid and you don't, hang out by yourself too much, talking into storm drains, maybe he just doesn't even care about you. If you're just always with your buddies living a normal life, he's like, not worth my time. But if you're super traumatized, he's like, them's the sweet treats.
Filet mignon.
Chicken cordon bleu.
Pineapple
Billet
pizza.
Mignon.
The McRib. Oh yeah.
But I will point out that's the other like big weakness of Pennywise that they call out specifically in this movie is he's a one-on-one killer. As soon as the kids gang up on him, he like has no idea what to do.
It's a good point.
I think we also know that there is some physicality with Pennywise. He is a physical creature to a certain extent. He's not like the ambiguous, is everywhere and right here and over. Like there is a Pennywise. He's shape-shifting, but he can get impaled. He can get shot. Like he can get damaged and he can get hurt. Again, it's still kind of hard to figure that out, but there is, I don't know, he's not entirely elusive. There are ways to get to the point where, okay, there he is. That's physically him. We can attack that thing. So I think that's also something to keep in mind. Is it's not like, oh, it's a haunted house. The house itself is haunted. It's like, okay, what do we do? But he is an individual, and he's the one doing it. You know?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's obviously not crazy effective, and it's like barely a part of the scene. But like when he first appears to Eddie as Pennywise after Eddie's broken his arm, and he like crawls out of the fridge, Eddie's first reaction is to like slap him, which on one hand is very funny, very weird, and obviously doesn't do much, but like he is a physical creature. Like at the very least, like you can buy yourself some time just like smacking him away, giving him a kick, just like friggin' leave me alone. But yeah, clearly like it's more relevant to the sequel, but like he's got a physical form and he's sort of bound to like the restrictions that physical form has. Like when he's a clown, he's something you can slap in the face, like versus when he's a bunch of burning hands coming out of a building, you can lock
High five them.
Yeah, you're gonna give them high fives. Nice and distracting. So it's kind of like Pennywise is weird because he's ambiguous. There's a million things we could say about him, and also not a lot we could say about him. But I feel like for the sake of brevity, we've hit the highlights. We've talked about the big weaknesses. We've talked about the big strengths. So I think the next thing we got to do is we got to have a look at our characters. We got to assess how they did, decisions we might make differently, and how we think we would approach this situation if we were in their place. So if we switch over to the kiddaroos in this movie, that's what they're called in Australia, the old kiddaroos. Where do we land on this? How do we feel about them? What's some of the assessment there? Lanson, I feel like it's been a minute since we've heard from you. I'm eager to hear what you make of these preteens.
These little kiddos. I mean, honestly, they're very resourceful. They're really resilient, and they think on the fly pretty well. I think they definitely have the strength in numbers, and they stick to that very well. I know there is a little bit of a separation there, but they end up, getting the gang back together for the big old showdown in the end. So, I think the one thing that, and I mean, it's hard to kind of like criticize them because they are kids, and it's like, as a kid, you don't know pretty much anything. You have a very limited.
Go ahead, roast them.
These freaking kids, these freaking dummy kids that deserve to be eaten by the clown.
Suckers.
They don't even know. They probably couldn't even spell cat if you spotted them a C and a T. Tell you what. No, but I mean, obviously when it's like, okay, we've seen some success like working together, and then it's like, no, we got to break up the band, man. But no, we got to break up the band. Obviously, like that's coming from a place of fear, right? And again, they are kids, but yeah. So I guess to sum up, I think that some of the strengths that they have is that they are quite clever. They do work together well. But yeah, it's my recommendation in that situation. I'm like, I would probably just stick with my friends and try to keep on that successful trend.
I agree. I think especially towards the end when they've made the commitment of like, we do this together, there's too many instances of like a voice whispering like Stanley, and he's like, what? And just wanders off. Like it's a bit egregious after they've made the commitment to stick together that I kind of had, I struggled with a lot. So I feel like that's something where I'd kind of be like, we're fighting a clown that shapeshifts. We know it wants us alone. I hear a voice whispering behind me. I'm like, fuck that, guys. stay close. He's on our trail. So I get what you mean. Like the big separation, I feel like is kind of warranted. They have a pretty intense blowout. Like two of them get real messed up during that fight. Eddie breaks his arm. Ben gets like sliced open. And it's like so far like Bill's leading the charge because he thinks his brother is alive, which I will admit is like, I understand what the movie's trying to say, but at the same time, there are a couple points where I'm like, Ben, come on, man. You're acting like a real dummy right now if you think that freaking kid ain't taco meat by now. So I do think that in terms of like the characters, I feel like after they know what they're up against, I struggle a lot with Bill still being like, I could save my brother. He's down there. It's like, if he's down there, I don't think you can save him. And then again, like I said, just after you've made the commitment to stick together, to be so easily like, what was that?
Let me go check it out alone.
Let me go have a look. Painting lady. Oh no.
How'd you get here?
You're supposed to be in the what do you call a house for Jews?
Synagogue. Oh man.
But yeah, anyway, Adam, what do you think? If you're kind of putting yourself in place of these kids, what's some things you like about them, you don't like about them?
Yeah, I pretty much ditto you guys. I didn't really think of, I think they all acted in ways that were very reasonable for kids. If I was in that situation as a 24-year-old person, I would do it very differently and probably, not to pat myself on the back too much, a little bit more smarter. But I can't see these kids' situations and understand that they're kids and their hormones are going crazy, and kids fight, and even like you guys pointed out, some of the fights in this and reasons for being upset were pretty warranted even for adults. But yeah, I agree. There were some stupid like things that they got separated by, a little bit of stupid drama too. But yeah, kids will be kids, and that's, I don't know, Pennywise is using that. So I don't know. I agree with you guys. I feel like they should have stuck together more at the end, but at the end of the day, most of the decisions I think were for the circumstances pretty smart, pretty resourceful. I love that they went and faced their fears, and I feel like this movie and story also kind of highlights how kids can be fearless in a way because of their naivety and their kind of like fourth spirit. You kind of see that just kind of blind courage in a lot of them that is very true with kids, where they're just like, whatever happens, we're just going to go into it. And I think more adults would have a lot more apprehension than these kids. So I don't know. I can't really fault them that much.
All right, I'm hosting. I think
you talk now, Luke. I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, brother Adam. I do think
amen.
Yes. I mean, it is pretty straightforward. Like, these are kids. It's not like we're talking about other interdimensional creatures fighting against Pennywise. We're talking about a bunch of traumatized kids in a town in Maine. And I think they all perform pretty admirably. I will admit, like, the more I watch this movie, every time I like rewatch this movie, I forget that this isn't like a lean, mean kind of story where like the whole movie is focused on stopping Pennywise. Like, the first like 3/4 of the movie is just them being like buddies. No, that's not entirely fair, but you know what I mean? Like, there are long sequences of them like cleaning Bev's bathroom and like going to the rock quarry and swimming around and being pals. So it is kind of funny, like, you try to look for areas to fault them. The adult part of me wants to be like, why are you wasting time in the rock quarry? Why are you sitting around listening to Bust a Move? by young MC when you could be tracking down this clown? But at the same time, it's like, oh, but they're just like kids and they haven't really pieced it all together yet. It's like kind of mysterious to them. So I feel like, yeah, it all kind of makes sense. So, all right. Well, we've talked about the antagonist, talked about these kiddos, as the Australians say. And now it's time to get into everybody's favorite part of this podcast, which is the championship rounds. First up, we have Final Boy status. This is the type of character who can make it almost all the way through the movie. They're smart, they're resourceful, they make good decisions, but at the end of the day, the bad guy just gets one over on them, and they are probably the final person this bad guy kills in the movie. They do not survive, even though they have performed admirably. So we call this category Final Boy status, and we are now going to go around the horn and see which of us could get Final Boy status. I think I will start with Lance and Lappin.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna give myself Final Boy status. I think I ain't afraid of no ghosts, so bring it.
So he just wouldn't shapeshift into a ghost. He'd find something else.
He can do that.
Wait. We got to go back to the first part of this podcast. His weaknesses and his strengths. What exactly? No, I'm just kidding.
Garlic bread.
If he's not a ghost, what is he? What does he do?
Wait, he's not a. And how does he?
Am I getting punked right now? Ashton, are you in there? You in the computer?
Guys, I'm not gonna lie. Maybe I watched the wrong movie. It's the one with like Christina Ricci where she's really young and she befriends a ghost and Bill Pullman's there. That's it, right?
I think you watched Sleepy Hollow.
Bill Pullman, what are you doing as
he was the headless horseman?
Headless horseman. Oh no. But I feel like I would give myself Final Boy status just by I feel like in emergency situations, I'm very much like, let's stick together. Let's just stick together. So I think just due to my fear of being alone, I'll win out the day in that category.
Hey, I feel you. But one who may or may not feel you, we will find out, is Senor Hueso Adam Bone. What do you make of Final Boy status in this film?
I will also give it to myself. And here's the way I've chosen to do it is I think a lot of times I say something like, yeah, I'm going to pretend like I'm a kid and it would add him as a kid. I think for this answer, I'm going to say, no, I'm an adult and I just get put into this world. I think I would be able to make Final Boy status because as an adult, I am a lot better at convincing other adults that there's a problem going on. So, and the way to do it is you can't give them the whole truth or else they won't believe you. You can't be like, the paintings are coming to life. You say something that puts them on alert. You say, hey, these kids are getting attacked because there's a town murderer, town pedophile. You say something that's relatable to them that puts them on alert. They're making smart decisions as a community, even though they don't know that there's an interdimensional being. So I think I can get the town on alert using my adult skills and then, like Lanson said, banding together as a whole community to at least survive to the end. And so we'll see about final girl status. But yeah, that's my answer.
Hot dang. As far as Final Boy status goes, I'll take us 3 for 3 and say I can give myself Final Boy status in this.
This guy's a pushover, man. We all got him.
Like I said, you kind of get Final Boy status just goofing around at the quarry,
just swimming,
having a crush on girl with red hair. I mean, look,
not above me.
Look, that's an every other Tuesday kind of thing for me. All right. So Final Boy status, it's in the bag. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So now we got to take it. We got to take it to the end zone here. We got to talk about the ultimate. We got to talk about final girl status. which is the person savvy enough to survive this movie all the way through. No cuts for this individual. And to keep everybody on their toes, I'm actually going to ask Adam to kick off the final girl status discussion. Would you give yourself final girl status in this movie?
I would give myself final girl status. I am going to learn early on from doing history that, what is it, 24, 27? What is
27.
it? 27 years. 27 years, similar occurrences. Like I hear about some kids and some stuff that happened to them. I'm like, all right. I start projecting into the universe that I am scared of goldfish. And I kind of like that thing, like if you're trying to like confuse Alexa and you just start saying a thing a mountain of times and it just starts being like, hey, you must be wanting to shop for goldfish on every single account you're on. It's going to be that thing where I very verbally and very visibly get very scared of goldfish. And I'm not scared of goldfish, but I try to convince Pennywise that I am. And so every time I see a goldfish, I'll be like, goldfish. And I'll say that a lot in my sleep. I'll be pretending to dream and I'll be like, goldfish. Oh, I'm so scared. So Pennywise is going to be like, this guy's going to be fetching easy. He's going to come at me. He's going to go all, what's that floppy Pokemon that is pointless in Super Smash Brothers? He's going to go all Goldie on me. And then I'm just going to tackle him. I'm just going to tackle him to the floor and give him what he's most scared of, which is true love. And I'll kiss him on the head and be like, I forgive you and I love you. And he'll just not know what to do with it. He'll disappear from existence.
Wither away.
Oh man.
I was just caught up in my head imagining you at parties, not even like there isn't even a goldfish in the room, but you're just going around loudly like, man, I wonder what I'd do if there was a goldfish at this party. Probably freak out.
And all my friends are like, dude, Adam, you gotta shut the fuck up about goldfish. And I'm like, I'm saving myself, all right?
You don't
understand.
You talk about him every day. You go to the grocery store and you flinch when you see goldfish crackers. I just had a bad experience as a child. What bad experience could you have had?
Don't judge my trauma, man. Don't judge my trauma.
All right. Now we got to kick it over to our friend Lance and Lappin. Is final girl status an option for you?
Yes.
Oh, how are you going to do it, my friend?
So, little known fact about me in this universe is that I too am an alien. I crash landed on Earth as a child, have a very similar growth pattern to human children. But the thing that I feed off of is those that feed off of fear. So in a way, I feed off of bravery. I'm a very brave alien is what I'm trying to say. So the more
and you
that
stand for truth, justice, and the American way.
It's true. I can also shoot lasers out of my eyes. And I'm pretty much cannot be killed. So Pennywise, he's thinking, oh, this jumpy kid over here, he probably couldn't even tie his own shoes, which maybe, I don't know. I may have a lot of abilities, but I'm not going to say that I'm the smartest cookie in the bunch. So anyway, that's beside the point. But he tries to attack me and he finds himself withering away as I'm just totally zapping him of all of his powers. Just, my pores are opening up. And I'm just absorbing all of his energy. So yeah, it gets to that point. I just kind of, I'm like, dude, what's going on? I toy with him a little bit. I'm like, oh, did you think you were going to scare me? Yeah, I don't think so, bro. So yeah, I'd probably do that. Slap him around a little bit. Maybe just uppercut him into the sun just to finish him off. And yeah. Regular day in the office for me. And the greatest thing about this is I have no idea that I'm an alien until that very moment. I've just been raised as this regular old kid. I'm like,
came out of nowhere.
I don't know. I can lift a tractor, but I mean, that's everybody, right?
Sometimes I
Hey.
sneeze and the dog dies, but you know, coincidence.
I mean, hey, whatever.
Sometimes
man.
I sneeze and then there's a hurricane in Taiwan. I mean, it happens to the best of us.
Just regular stuff. So
The
by
way your
fact-
dad makes you lift tractors on the farm.
it's just regular exercise. Just got to get big for next football season, So yeah, due to me also being an interdimensional being that feeds off of the fear of those that feed off of fear. See, I couldn't even explain that right then. It was so convoluted. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, and I punch him and I hurt him and I kill him. And yeah, I win.
How?
So,
Well, I will join you, gentlemen, in declaring that I will get final girl status in this movie. And here's my approach to this. Like Adam, I am assuming that I am a full-grown man going into this situation. I have also had a little bit of time to do some research, find out that every 27 years this thing wakes up. And let's just say when Pennywise wakes up, he's in for a big surprise in that the entire town of Derry, Maine is now just gone. I have successfully convinced everybody to move to an entirely new state and have left behind a barren wasteland where there is nothing for Pennywise to feed on. He wanders for miles hoping for an oasis where he can find some sustenance. And what does he stumble upon? But one, Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, the man with no fear, as played by Ryan Reynolds in the 2011 Best Picture Oscar winner, Green Lantern. I assume it won. I didn't bother watching the awards. Didn't have time to watch Green Lantern sweep every category.
No, it definitely got special effects and all that.
yeah.
And because he is the man without fear, he can confront Pennywise, and Pennywise has got nothing on him. Pretty sure he takes him off world to some sort of prison planet. There's a whole prison labor thing that's actually really sketchy, and I don't morally know how to feel about it. And the only thing that comforts me is the fact that Pennywise is a child murderer. So the idea of him being involved in prison labor, I'm not against it, but it doesn't mean I like the system as a whole. But either way, I'm very at home in my new home, which is Derry, Ontario, where I have successfully moved the entire town. And that's how I give myself final girl status.
Nice.
And I know you explained this, but when you said move the town, I imagined the whole Age of Ultron thing where it's just in the air and just move to a different place. I guess if you do that, he would come with you. So maybe not. I
was actually thinking SpongeBob. We'll just take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else.
What was that big guy saying again? Oh man.
So I just liked the comedy of him waking up and being like, time to get back to work, goes up to the surface and is like, what
in the world?
There's
it's
literally
just him
nothing
in the
here.
sewer grate and that's it. It's
just imagining him coming out of a manhole to the blank void that John Oliver was filming in. It's just, there's no sky, it's just white. We took everything with us somehow.
Yeah,
we took time and space with us.
Yeah, hey, if we got the turtle on our side, we can do whatever we want. But that brings this particular episode of Final Boy Status to a close. There's only one thing left, which is to talk pluggy plugs. Do you gentlemen have anything you'd like to give a shout out to? Something you're working on, something you're enjoying?
This podcast.
Gosh dang it. I was gonna say that.
Ha, I took it, snatched it up. But yeah, no, in all seriousness, it's always a good time to get together with friends and just to do this. And I really appreciate, all the support that we've been getting. So yeah, just keep listening. We enjoy doing it. Hopefully you guys enjoy listening to us. Obviously, if you've made it this far in the episode, then probably. So yeah, just keep on listening.
Yeah. Home stretch of season 2. We only have only a finite amount of eps to go. I believe our next one will be on It Chapter 2. So when I say It Chapter 2 next time, it won't be incorrect.
But you still gonna fuck it up and watch the Tim Curry one and be like, gosh dang it.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch the porn parody of It Chapter 2 and be like, I think I got the plot.
Between all the coitus, I think there was a clown in there somewhere. I don't know. He slipped in and out.
Between all that sucking and fucking, I think I understood basically the premise. Yeah. I'm sure I'm working on stuff that you can find. You can just follow me on Twitter and I'll tell you all about it there. It's at Luke Haueter, LukeHaueter. Happy to be jumping into just the last few episodes for this season. I think we only have 2 left that are going to come out in like the regular season. Then we might do something special for the holidays later on. It's hard to keep track of, but keep hanging out with us. We're almost there, you guys. Happy Final Boy status. Catch you next time.
This has been an Underqualified Idiocracy media production, produced by Lanson Lappin, Adam Bone, and Luke Haueter. Theme music for the episode was written by Rachel Robison. You can hear more of Rachel's music at rachelrobinsonmusic.com. You can also find her on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching at Robel Racheson. Artwork for the YouTube version of this podcast was created by Trinity Rodriguez. You can follow her on Twitter by searching at InstrinBaby to see more of her work. This podcast was recorded in Underqualified Studios and edited by Luke Haueter, with special thanks to Mike Fuchs for providing audio assistance. The illustrious voice acting providing the intro and outro of this episode is Shane Alvey of the Paradox Files voice acting. You can explore more of his work on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching at The Paradox Files.